They say every family in this city built something, an empire, a name, or at least a story worth lying about. The Kingsleys had all three. Their name opened courtroom doors, their money sealed them shut, and for decades they lived like they were born under a different set of laws. I used to think I was lucky to be part of their world. Now I know better. My name is Elise Moore, and if you're hearing this, it means someone finally listened. Before we begin, hit subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just about one family. It's about what happens when the truth costs more than silence. When I met Aaron Kingsley, he wasn't the kind of man you expect to inherit an empire. He was quiet, disheveled, always carrying guilt like a second skin. His father, Charles Kingsley, ran the oldest law firm in Atlanta, a firm rumored to make or break judges, and his mother, Celeste, was the kind of woman who smiled like she'd already forgiven your sins before you'd committed them. The Kingsleys' world revolved around image. Every photo, every dinner, every church pew appearance had a purpose. And Aaron, their only son, was the imperfect piece they kept polishing for public display. I was just a law student, interning for the firm. I didn't belong in their circle, but Aaron saw me anyway. Maybe that was my first mistake, believing attention from a Kingsley was affection, not strategy. Our relationship was supposed to stay quiet. His parents didn't approve, not because of who I was, but because of what I wasn't. No lineage, no legacy, no reason to be written into their story. But when Aaron started talking about the fund, I started listening. It was a charity front called the Kingsley Foundation for Victim Aid. Noble name. But every transaction I reviewed ended in the same routing code, one leading to offshore accounts under shell corporations tied to the firm. When I asked questions, Aaron said, "You don't understand. My father says this is how justice gets funded." That's when I realized, justice, for them, wasn't a principle. It was a business model. The deeper I looked, the darker it got. The firm's biggest cases, the ones they won miraculously, all connected to payouts from that same foundation. Victims settled, evidence disappeared, and the Kingsleys came out cleaner every time. One night, after a gala downtown, Aaron drove us to the riverfront. He was shaking, hands gripping the wheel. "If you ever find those files," he said, "don't open them alone." I didn't understand what he meant until the next morning, when the news broke that Aaron had been found dead near the same river. Police called it an accident. The family called it a tragedy. But the coroner's report said his blood alcohol level didn't match what they'd claimed. And I knew Aaron didn't drink that night. He'd been trying to tell me something, and now he was gone. I tried to reach Charles, but he never answered. Celeste sent me flowers with a note, "Grief is private. Let it stay that way." A week later, my apartment was broken into. My laptop, gone. My notes, shredded. The police report disappeared before it was filed. And when I told my supervisor at the firm, she told me to take a leave of absence for my own safety. That's when the calls started, blocked numbers, static on the line, sometimes a voice whispering, "You're not one of us." I started recording everything. Every threat, every strange knock on my door. I knew they were cleaning up their mess, and I was part of it. A friend from the DA's office slipped me a flash drive one night at a diner. "You didn't get this from me," he said. On it were scanned ledgers, invoices, and one folder marked heirloom. Inside, a list of payouts labeled mitigation settlements. Each name was a person who had either accused a Kingsley client, or a Kingsley themselves, of wrongdoing. Each name also had a date marked resolved. Aaron's name was the last one on the list. The date? The night he died. I don't remember leaving the diner. I remember running, the rain turning the streets into mirrors. For weeks, I tried to contact journalists, investigators, anyone who'd listen. But every email bounced back. Every message deleted before it sent. The Kingsleys had friends everywhere, and I was a ghost shouting into static. That's when I started narrating this story, in case it became the only way to tell it. Because even if I disappear, I need someone to know, Aaron didn't fall. He was pushed, by the same people who swore to uphold the law. And the law bowed to them. This isn't just about a family. It's about a system that lets legacy become armor, and silence become inheritance. The night Aaron died, I thought the story ended with him. But I was wrong. The Kingsleys didn't erase evidence, they repackaged it. A month later, the Kingsley Foundation announced a memorial grant for justice reform. The press called it generous. The mayor called it historic. I watched the broadcast alone, listening to Celeste Kingsley deliver a eulogy dressed as a press release. Aaron believed in transparency, she said, her smile rehearsed. We'll continue his mission. Behind her stood Charles, hand resting on her shoulder, eyes empty. They turned his death into a marketing campaign. That was the moment I stopped mourning and started fighting. I began digging again, but this time, I did it quietly. Through a friend at a financial firm, I learned that the Kingsleys' accounts were nested through a maze of holding companies registered to empty offices across 3 states. On paper, they owned nothing. In reality, they owned everything. Real estate. Judges. Campaigns. Even charities. And then I found something worse, internal invoices showing consulting payments to law enforcement officials. Not bribes. Salaries. The system wasn't corrupted, it was hired. I compiled everything onto a drive labeled Echo and stored backups in multiple cloud servers. That same week, someone followed me home. Same silver sedan, 3 nights in a row. When I went to the police, the officer took my statement without writing anything down. He didn't even ask for a plate number. That's when I realized the story wasn't just about the Kingsleys anymore, it was about everyone who owed them something. Then one night, an email arrived from an unlisted domain. No message, just an attachment, a single audio file. When I played it, I heard Aaron's voice, recorded days before he died. If you're hearing this, he said, they know you know. The files are in the archive. Room 317. But don't trust anyone, not even, the recording cut off mid-sentence. I froze, my breath caught halfway between grief and terror. The metadata showed the file was uploaded after his death. Someone wanted me to keep digging. The next morning, I went back to the Kingsley firm under the pretense of returning my work ID. Security didn't question me, I was still part of the family's public image. I rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, counting the hums between stops. Room 317 was locked with a biometric scanner, but the janitor's master key fit like it was meant to. Inside, rows of filing cabinets stretched into the dark, each marked with case names. And at the back, a steel drawer engraved with one word, heirloom. Inside was a binder of signed agreements, non-disclosure contracts, payout receipts, gag orders. I recognized names I'd seen on news reports. Victims who had settled. Some of them were dead. Others had disappeared. I scanned every page I could, sent digital copies to the encrypted folder Aaron had left. But as I was finishing, I heard footsteps in the hall. They weren't rushed, they were deliberate, controlled. I shut off my light and pressed myself against the shelves. The door creaked open, spilling fluorescent light across the room. I recognized the voice immediately, Charles Kingsley. You should have stayed quiet, Elise. My throat went dry. He wasn't surprised to see me, he'd expected it. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. You think you're the first to dig? You're not. But you might be the last. He reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for a phone. On its screen was a live video feed, my apartment. My front door. Someone standing outside it. You leave this building, they walk in. You go public, they bury you in litigation until you wish you drowned with Aaron. His words were smooth, practiced. I didn't reply. I walked past him, keeping my face still, my hands steady. He let me leave. That was the scariest part. He didn't need to threaten me again. He knew fear would finish the job. But fear has an expiration date. 2 weeks later, a whistleblower contact from an investigative podcast reached out. He'd received one of my backup drives through an anonymous source. The story had spread further than I thought. Together, we began connecting dots across states, donations tied to political campaigns, off-the-book settlements, even influence over court rulings. Everything pointed back to the Kingsleys. We released the first batch of documents under a fake identity. Within hours, local news ran the story. Within days, the FBI had questions. And within weeks, the Kingsley firm went from untouchable to radioactive. I watched their building from across the street as federal agents walked in and employees walked out. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was dread. Because power like that doesn't vanish, it relocates. A month after the raid, Charles Kingsley held a press conference. He stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by lawyers. "Our family has always stood for justice," he declared. "We will cooperate fully with investigators." The cameras flashed, the microphones crowded forward, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the myth falter. His tie was crooked. His voice cracked. For a brief second, the mask slipped, and underneath, there was nothing but exhaustion. But the next day, the narrative shifted. Articles surfaced calling the investigation politically motivated. Anonymous accounts online spread conspiracy theories about me, claiming I was unstable, obsessed, vindictive. The internet turned into a courtroom, and the verdict was chaos. Someone leaked my old psychiatric records from college, a panic attack twisted into proof that I couldn't be trusted. They didn't need to destroy the evidence anymore. They only had to destroy me. But truth, once it leaks, can't be resealed. The podcast episode went viral, sparking nationwide attention. Investigators found encrypted emails linking the Kingsley Foundation to offshore trust funds in Belize and Malta. Charles was indicted for fraud and obstruction. Celeste disappeared from public view. The firm collapsed under subpoenas and resignations. Yet even as their empire crumbled, a piece of it survived. New names, new faces, new front companies registered the same week their old ones were dissolved. It was never just about one family. It was about the machinery of silence that let them exist in the first place. And like all machines built on secrets, it will keep running until someone cuts the power. Now, every time I walk past the Kingsley building, boarded up and rain-streaked, I can still hear the hum of servers beneath the ground, those same machines archiving decades of silence. I think about Aaron, about the files he risked everything to protect. I think about the weight of truth and how heavy it becomes when no one wants to carry it. People ask why I still talk about them, why I didn't move on. The answer is simple: stories like this don't end when justice is served. They end when people stop believing they can happen again. So if you're still listening, remember this. The Kingsleys weren't monsters. They were human. They built walls of power around their guilt until they believed it wasn't guilt at all. Maybe that's the real crime, forgetting that evil doesn't always hide in shadows. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit and donates in your name. So tell me, if your family's legacy was built on a lie, would you expose it, or protect it? In the end, the Kingsleys didn't fall because of guilt. They fell because their silence got too loud to ignore. Power always believes it's permanent, until someone presses record. Maybe truth isn't what destroys legacies, maybe it's what finally makes them real. The name still carries weight in this city, whispered in courtrooms and backrooms like a ghost you can't indict. But ghosts don't die, they linger, waiting for the next story to sound just like theirs. Would you expose your family's truth if it meant losing everything they built? Or would you keep the silence, and inherit the sin?